In 1986, the city of Cleveland had a severe image problem. Locals and outsiders alike frequently made jokes about the town's rough reputation, and civic leaders were desperate to rewrite the narrative. Their solution was a massive charity fundraiser designed to put Cleveland back on the map. The previous year, Disneyland set the Guinness World Record for the largest simultaneous balloon launch, and Cleveland decided the perfect way to clean up its image was to break that record. The project took 6 months of intense planning. Organizers constructed a heavy net the size of a city block, suspending it over Public Square in the heart of downtown. It took thousands of volunteers working tirelessly to fill the 1.5 million balloons. Every single one had to be inflated by hand, from heavy metal tanks of helium. This colossal effort was supposed to symbolize the rebirth of the city. But the sheer volume of balloons piling up beneath that net created an irreversible logistical trap. Just a few miles north of the crowded downtown square, the waters of Lake Erie were telling a very different story. A severe storm system had violently rolled through the region the night before the launch, bringing high winds and dangerous conditions. During that storm, 2 men who had gone out fishing were reported missing by their families, leaving nothing but an abandoned boat bobbing on the water. The Coast Guard immediately deployed search and rescue teams to scour the choppy lake in hopes of finding them alive. As over 100,000 people gathered in the city for a joyous celebration, a desperate life-or-death search was silently unfolding just out of sight. On the morning of the launch, the organizers realized they had a new, immediate threat. A second major rainstorm was rapidly closing in on the city. Rescheduling at this point was nearly impossible. With 1.5 million balloons already inflated and straining against the net, they were forced to trigger the release ahead of schedule. At first, the launch was a monumental triumph. A massive, colorful cloud surged upward, dwarfing the surrounding skyscrapers. The organizers had operated on a simple scientific assumption. The helium balloons would float high into the upper atmosphere, linger for a while, and eventually deflate to fall harmlessly back to Earth. But the approaching weather created a physical barrier. The warm balloons hit a dense wall of cold air and rain, forcing the swarm back to the ground. Worse, shifting winds pushed the mass laterally across the city and out over the water. On the ground, the descending balloons flooded the city streets in droves. Drivers were suddenly blinded, leading to a series of car accidents that actually required bulldozers to clear the roads. The sheer volume of rubber and string completely clogged local runways, forcing a total suspension of all incoming and outgoing flights. This is an aerial photograph of Burke Lakefront Airport. Because the runways sit directly on the edge of the lake, the airport is completely exposed to weather systems moving across the water, making it a prime target for the balloon swarm. Cleveland attempted to project the image of a highly functional, modern metropolis. Instead, the city managed to instantly paralyze its own transportation networks. Meanwhile, out on Lake Erie, the Coast Guard teams were still desperately searching for the 2 missing fishermen. Then, the wind shift blew an estimated 60. The Coast Guard later described the search as trying to find a needle in a haystack, noting how impossible it was to distinguish a human head or an orange life jacket from the endless sea of balloons. The city's desperate attempt at a positive public relations campaign had directly manufactured an impossible environment for a rescue mission. Just 2 days after the celebration filled the sky, the Coast Guard was forced to permanently call off the search. Shortly after the search ended, the bodies of both missing men washed ashore. There is a bitter irony to the event's intended goal. Balloon Fest did technically succeed, making it into the 1988 edition of the Guinness Book of World Records. But that 1988 edition was the only one to ever feature it. Following the disaster, Guinness permanently retired the category of balloon launching. Cleveland's unchecked hubris, ignoring the realities of an approaching weather system and an ongoing crisis right next door, resulted in a fatal tragedy that left a permanent, dark mark on the record books.